Hi everyone, I'm here today just to do a quick casting video. I recently got some of the new Prima Finnabair Imaginarium moulds, and in particular I wanted to have a go at casting this this frame using casting resin. So I'm going to take that out of the packaging. The casting resin I have is a cream coloured one, and it's actually one that's measured in weight rather than volume. So when you get your resin, you do need to make sure whether it is one that you need to weigh it or whether you're going to measure it by the millilitres. The other ones I've got, I usually measure by millilitres, but this is the first time I've had one that is by weight. So I've got a little scales here, a really precise digital scale, and I have got on my gloves to protect my hands. I do also wear, because I found in the past I have got a bit of a reaction on my arms sometimes when I've been using resin. So I now wear an old shirt, and I also wear an apron to protect my clothes, because I have also got resin on my clothes before now, and you really don't want to do that. I'm working in a well ventilated space, and I have got a window nearby if I needed to open it. So that is something to be aware of. This particular resin doesn't have much of an odour, and I've found most of the resins I've worked with don't tend to have an odour, but I would still recommend that you do work in a well ventilated area because it is mixing chemicals. This resin is worked on a 1-to-1 ratio, so you put the same amount of part A to the same amount of part B, but again, different resins have different ratios, so you do need to make sure that you read carefully on your labels what it says. So mine actually says it's 100% polyol, which is the part A, to 100% isocyanate, which is the part B, which is here. So this one, again, I always make sure I do read the instructions carefully. This one tells me that I have to make sure that I do shake the bottles vigorously before I use it, so I will be doing that. And like I said, this is a casting resin. It's a very quick curing casting resin, so I only have a few minutes once I've mixed the two parts together to actually pour them into the moulds before it starts to set. And you can usually feel it starts to generate heat when it starts to set. If you're using a clear resin, quite often if they're the ones that are more for jewellery making, and I've used those in the past, you may very well have a much longer working time, because obviously you might be wanting to put beads and different things in with your resin. And so they generally have a sort of initial curing time. You get about a working time of 20-30 minutes, and then they take a lot longer to cure before you can demold them. These ones this resin you can demold within about 10-15 minutes, but all resin isn't totally cured for usually about 72 hours, so that means right through to the core. So although it might feel hard, it still won't be thoroughly cured, so you do really need to leave it for a couple of days before you're starting to work with it. So I'm going to start by shaking up part A. I'm going to put I've got a silicone cup. I'm going to switch my scales on first actually. I always used to use the little plastic cups that come with some of the resins, but I've decided that these are much more environmentally friendly, because in the silicone ones, also I like the fact you get a spout, you get a bigger cup, but also you can then clean out the resin once it's dried, once it's started to cure, and then you can reuse them. So let's give this a really good shake. This is part A, and I've put the cup on the scales and I've reset it back to 0, and I'm going to put that there, and I'm just going to try, this is quite tricky for me, this to just measure out maybe 20 grams. Now, I'm not worried if it's precisely precise, because these are very precise scales, so they are not, we're nearly there. Tiny bit. Ooh, just over 20 grams. And I often do then wipe around my lid before I put the top on. So let's shake up part B. Give it a really good shake. I apologise if you're getting any shadows. I've just realised the light there's nice sunlight coming through the window. So now that's on 2010, so I'm going, let's take that little bit off the top. I'm going to try to get it onto 40-20 so that I know I've got the same amount. Remember, try not to touch the I have gone over, but I'm not going to worry too much. This is like precise on these scales. So let's take the scales away, and then I'm going to give it a mix. So you're going to give it a good mix. You don't, when you mix the clear resin that you use for jewellery making, you are very much more aware that you don't want to get bubbles, and you do mix it for a longer period of time because you've got a longer working time. With this one, you haven't got such a long working time, so you don't need to mix it quite as much. And I find that this is a lot thinner, this one. Now I'm working on a silicone mat as well, so that I don't damage any of my other surfaces, but also I have put some tissue paper underneath, because silicone at the end of the day is a plastic and you do not want it to be getting everywhere. So I'm just going to pour it, and this is what I like with these silicone cups. You get a much more precise application. If I'm doing anything that's really small, if you get something like a little old medicine spoon, you know, the ones you get with the children's medicine bottles or something like that, then you can use those to get into smaller areas. I'm going to do this one over here because I've got some left. That's a big tip I would have, is that always have extra moulds around you, because you do, if you've got silicone left over, you do want to try and use it, not silicone, sorry, resin left over, you do want to try and use it up, you don't want to waste it. So that's, this mould is fantastic because it's got all these little bits, so I'm going to even fill up this little frame that's inside the big frame. And at the moment it's still okay for me to be, let's try this square one. I haven't got an awful lot left, so I might just about, hasn't quite, should have probably gone for the other little bits instead. So in a moment what you will see is the resin will start to change colour. You'll see it start to get a white look about it. So what I will do is I will leave this camera running, and then I might do a speed up when I actually edit, so that you can watch it drying. Okay, so it's been about, I'd say 10 minutes since I poured the resin into the mould, and what I generally try to do is I just gently pull the mould at the sides, just to see if the mould is, the cast is ready to come out. And so this is starting to come away at the sides, but obviously if you've got little tiny bits, you just do need to be a little bit careful. But once you can start once it starts to lift, and if you just gently do this with the mould, you can gradually just gently ease it out of the mould. Now when you first demould your casting, the resin is often a little bit more pliable, so if you've got any bits off the edges that have gone over, this is the point at which you can still snip them with a pair of scissors, but it will go quite hard quite quick. So generally at this point it is still a little bit pliable, so this is the point in which then you would, if you wanted to make it a bit more shaped, then you could. And there you go, so it's picked up all the beautiful detail in that mould. So I would now lay that one, because I want it to be flat, so I would lay it down and push it down. Now these are ones I cast probably about an hour ago, and they are already pretty hard. And this was the gears, the large gears mould, and this was from the wings and bones that Finnabair has also brought out. So those ones are already, if I hit on there, you can hear they're pretty hard already. And so this is still at the moment a little bit pliable. So if you just leave that then to the side, then that will gradually harden up. So let's have a go with this smaller one over here. Obviously, if they're more solid pieces, they're a lot less delicate to get out. Ooh, that's attached to that. So, and this is what I mean. If you've got this like on here, there's a little tiny bit where the resin went over the edge. This is the point at which I would get my scissors and I would just gently snip that off. Sometimes you can even just pull them off and they'll just come off quite easily, so you've got that off already. There's one of my little screw heads. Oop. And again, just snip that bit off there while it's still a little bit more pliable. Let's get this one out. So again, I could probably just pull that off and it just comes off quite easily. Now this one in the centre. So you can even get these little dinky frames with all that detail. So you could put that in the middle there. And just a little cog. And this is the one I didn't quite fill up, didn't have enough resin to quite fill up. But sometimes you can still get, you know, something that's usable, you know, or even if you just want to use it for layering up other pieces, it's something, it's not worth wasting your resin for. And now, so my cup, I'll just wait for that to make sure that's really hard, and then I'll be able to just dig that out and then give that a wash. And so that's how you cast your resin, your quick cast resin in your silicone moulds. I hope that was helpful. I'm going to use some of these pieces in a mixed media piece, which I will probably be videoing and putting up on my channel soon. So I hope that was helpful, and have a lovely day everybody. Bye.